The heavy glass doors of Vanguard Enterprises slid open, and I stepped into the polished marble lobby holding a velvet-lined box. Inside lay 200 custom, gold-embossed wedding invitations. We were set to say our vows in 3 weeks. Suddenly the overhead chime echoed through the floor. "Attention all staff," the speaker crackled with Chloe's sharp, decisive voice. "Please assemble in the main atrium immediately for an urgent executive announcement." I smiled to myself, placing the box on the receptionist's desk. I figured she was finally announcing our wedding date to the firm. I walked toward the atrium, taking my place near the front. Chloe stood on the raised glass platform, looking stunning in her tailored ivory blazer. Next to her stood Marcus Reed, our vice president of operations, wearing a smug grin that rubbed me the wrong way. "Thank you all for gathering," Chloe began, her voice amplified across the room. "Vanguard Enterprises is moving into a new era of aggressive global expansion. To achieve our true potential, we must eliminate dead weight, regardless of personal ties." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. She met my gaze, but her eyes were void of any warmth. "Ethan Vance," she said, her voice dropping all affection. "Step forward." The crowd parted. Whispers erupted around me as I slowly walked to the base of the platform. "Chloe? What's going on?" I asked quietly, keeping my tone low. "What is this?" She didn't answer me directly. Instead, she unclipped a thick manila folder and pulled out a document, speaking directly into her lapel microphone. "As CEO, I am officially terminating your employment at Vanguard Enterprises, effective immediately." The atrium fell dead silent. I stood frozen, my heart pounding against my ribs. "Is this a joke?" I forced out, staring up at her. "We built this company together, Chloe. I wrote the core software algorithms. I handled every major client contract for 5 years." Marcus stepped forward, resting a hand patronizingly on Chloe's shoulder. "Let's be realistic, Ethan. You were a decent operational manager in the beginning, but your conservative approach is holding us back. You don't have the vision to lead a multi-billion-dollar empire." "Stay out of this, Marcus," I snapped before looking back at my fiancée. "Chloe, talk to me. We're getting married in 3 weeks." Chloe reached down, slid off her diamond engagement ring, and dropped it into my open palm. It felt heavier than lead. "The wedding is off, Ethan," she said without a trace of regret. "I need a partner who elevates my status, not a quiet analyst who hides in the background. You're holding me back, both professionally and personally." "You used me," I whispered, the realization cutting deeper than any physical blade. "You waited until the board approved the new licensing draft I drafted yesterday, didn't you?" "Business is business, Ethan," she replied coldly. "Security, please escort Mr. Vance off the premises. He is no longer permitted on company property." 2 bulky guards in black uniforms immediately grabbed my arms. Marcus leaned over the railing, whispering loud enough for only me to hear, "Thanks for building the kingdom, buddy. I'll take good care of it, and her." Employees stared at the floor, too terrified to speak as I was marched past the receptionist's desk, past my box of wedding invitations, and shoved through the front doors. The cold autumn rain hit my face instantly, soaking through my suit. I stood on the wet pavement, gasping for breath as the sting of ultimate betrayal washed over me. The pain was suffocating, burning through my chest like fire. But as I wiped the rainwater from my eyes, the heartbreak began to harden into something else. Something dangerous. They thought I was just a quiet co-founder who could be discarded. They didn't know the truth. I reached into my inner jacket pocket, pulled out my water-resistant, encrypted satellite phone, and dialed a number I hadn't called in 5 years. The line rang twice before a deep, calm voice answered. "Ethan? Is it time?" "Grandfather," I said, my voice turning dead calm as the rain poured around me. "Chloe just fired me and canceled the wedding." A heavy silence fell over the line, followed by a sharp exhale. "She made a monumental mistake, my boy. Activate Protocol Alpha," I commanded, staring up at the gleaming top floor of the skyscraper. "It's time to show them who actually owns Vance-Vanguard Group." I shoved the cardboard box onto the kitchen table, tossing in framed photos of Chloe and me on vacation in Italy. 5 years of memories stripped away in less than 5 minutes. I slammed the lid shut and taped it sealed. My phone buzzed on the counter. An unfamiliar number flashed on the screen. "Ethan?" "It's Sarah," a hushed voice said as soon as I picked up. "Are you alone?" "Sarah?" I pulled the phone closer. "Yeah, I'm at my apartment. Are you okay?" "I'm using a burner phone," she whispered hurriedly. "We can't talk about this over the line. Meet me at the diner on 4th Street in 20 minutes. Bring something to write on. I'm on my way. 20 minutes later, I slid into a dark leather booth at the back of the dimly lit diner. Sarah Jenkins, my former executive assistant, sat across from me, clutching a thick leather briefcase to her chest like a shield. You shouldn't be risking your job for me, Sarah, I said gently, leaning across the table. They threw you out like trash, Ethan, Sarah snapped quietly, her eyes flashing with anger. After everything you did for that firm, I couldn't just sit by and watch them get away with it. She unzipped her briefcase and pulled out a manila folder, sliding it toward me across the sticky table. What is this? I asked, opening the tab. Proof, Sarah said, pointing at the top document. Marcus and Chloe haven't just been planning this for weeks. They've been forging internal audits for 6 months. Marcus altered your quarterly operational reports to make it look like your division lost $12 million. I stared at the falsified balance sheets, my stomach twisting. They presented these to Arthur Sterling and the board? Exactly, Sarah nodded. That's how Chloe convinced the board to strip your executive authority last month. She told them you were incompetent and mentally checked out because of the wedding planning. And Marcus? I asked, my grip tightening on the folder until the paper crumpled under my fingers. Marcus orchestrated the paper trail, Sarah replied softly. In exchange, Chloe promised him 15% of your revoked equity once the buyout clears next week. They think you're completely broken, Ethan. Marcus was laughing about it in the hallway right after security kicked you out. A strange, icy coldness washed over my chest, freezing away the last lingering aches of grief. The heartbreak was gone. In its place remained absolute, crystal-clear focus. They built an empire of cards on top of my silence, I said, my voice dropping to a low, steady tone. Are you going to sue them? Sarah asked eagerly, leaning forward. We can take this to the Securities and Exchange Commission tomorrow morning. We can stop the equity transfer. No, I said, closing the folder with a deliberate snap. If I take them to court now, they'll hire expensive lawyers, stall the trial for years, and hide behind legal corporate loopholes. Sarah frowned, looking bewildered. So what are you going to do? Just let them win? They haven't won anything, Sarah, I replied, a small dark smile touching my lips. They think they took my company, but they only took the empty title. They don't know that my holding entity owns the core software patents and the actual building lease. Wait, you own the building? Sarah gasped, covering her mouth. I own everything, I whispered. Chloe and Marcus want to play executives? I'm going to let them run the company for a few more days. I want them to host their massive victory press conference. I want them to boast to the entire industry about their supreme leadership. And then I pull the foundation out from under their feet, I said, staring straight into Sarah's eyes. When pride reaches its absolute peak, the fall hits the hardest. Tomorrow, I start the legal revocation of their software licenses. Sarah looked at me for a long moment, seeing the change in my expression, and nodded slowly. Tell me what you need me to do. Keep your head down, I commanded softly. Act like you're loyal to them. Feed them false confidence, and keep sending me every digital audit log Marcus signs. I stood up, slid the folder under my coat, and looked out the rain-streaked window toward the illuminated spire of Vanguard Enterprises. Let them celebrate, I murmured. Their nightmare starts soon. I stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows of a penthouse suite, looking down at the illuminated rooftop garden across the street. Chloe and Marcus were hosting a lavish victory celebration. Glass flutes clinked in the distance while reporters snapped photos of Chloe, who glowed under the spotlight as she announced Vanguard's grand global expansion. They look quite comfortable in your shoes, Ethan, a sharp, accented voice remarked behind me. I turned around to face Elena Rostova. She sat on a dark velvet couch, swirling a glass of amber liquid, her ice-blue eyes assessing me with terrifying intelligence. Comfortable but ignorant, I said, stepping toward her desk. They think they inherit a golden throne, Elena. They don't know the crown belongs to someone else. Elena smirked, leaning forward. For 3 years, I offered you $40 million for a 15% stake in Vanguard. You turned me down every single time, insisting you were just a minority operations partner. Why reveal yourself to me now? I pulled a leather-bound folio from my coat and laid it on the glass table between us. Because that was a lie to protect my grandfather's privacy and keep my engagement real. This folder contains the original master trust deeds of Vance-Vanguard Group. I don't own a minority stake, Elena. I hold 72% of the voting shares through an anonymous offshore holding firm. Elena picked up the documents, her sharp eyes scanning the notary seals. Her calm demeanor shattered for a split second, replaced by pure astonishment. "Good Lord," she whispered, looking up at me with newfound respect. "You didn't just build the company, you literally own the soil they stand on. And right now, Chloe is on television promising our European partners a massive supply chain rollout by next month," I pointed out, gesturing toward the silenced TV screen mounted on the wall. "A rollout that relies entirely on Rostova logistics." Elena leaned back, a calculating smile spreading across her red lips. "You want me to reject her expansion contracts?" "I want you to do more than reject them," I said, my voice cold and deliberate. "I want you to execute a hostile freeze on all international transit routes linked to Vanguard's current licensing code. When she tries to sign the deal tomorrow, I want her to find out her access codes are completely dead. That will choke Vanguard's cash flow within 48 hours, Elena noted, tilting her head. The board will panic. Shares will plunge. Why hurt your own company? Because a tree cannot grow healthy fruit if the roots are rotten, I replied sharply. I am pruning the rot. Once the shares drop, my holding firm will trigger an emergency liquidity buyback. I will buy out the panic-stricken board members for pennies on the dollar. Elena set her glass down with a definitive click. And what do I get for playing the executioner in your personal game of revenge? Exclusive rights to the primary European distribution network, I answered instantly. Once I strip Chloe and Marcus of their titles, you get the exact partnership you've been chasing for 3 years, with me as the sole leader. Elena stared at me for 3 agonizing seconds before extending her hand. You are far more dangerous than you let on, Ethan Vance. I like that. I shook her hand tightly. Call your operations team. Shut down the routes. Consider it done, Elena said, pulling out her encrypted tablet and tapping the screen rapidly. By midnight, your treacherous ex-fiancé will be signing shipping contracts that are worth less than the paper they're printed on. Thank you, Elena, I said softly, looking back out the window toward the rooftop party. Through the glass, I watched Chloe raise her glass high, making a triumphant toast to the cheering crowd. She had no idea that while she celebrated her fake victory, the ground beneath her feet was already crumbling away. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was an automated system alert from my holding company's server. International Transit Protocol nullified. The trap is set, I whispered to the empty room. Enjoy the party, Chloe. It's the last one you'll ever throw with my money. My laptop screen glowed in the dark living room, displaying Vanguard's stock chart tumbling into a steep red dive. Elena's freeze had hit them fast. My private encrypted line buzzed. I tapped the speaker button instantly. Ethan, it's Sarah, my former assistant said, her voice shaking with excitement. The executive floor is absolute chaos. Arthur Sterling just stormed into Chloe's corner office 5 minutes ago. Did the legal notice arrive? I asked calmly, sipping my dark coffee. It did. The breach of contract notice from the parent holding company landed right on her desk, Sarah replied. Sterling was screaming at her. He said if international logistics remain frozen for another 24 hours, Vanguard loses 40% of its quarterly revenue. What did Chloe say? She tried to blame the transit authorities, but Sterling didn't buy it, Sarah chuckled softly. He told her that her leadership is already failing and called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow afternoon. Keep your eyes open, Sarah, I instructed. Watch Marcus closely. When pressure builds, rats always look for an escape hatch. Will do, Ethan. Talk soon. I disconnected the line and leaned back in my leather chair. Right on cue, my personal phone vibrated on the wooden desk. A text message flashed on the screen from Chloe. Hey Ethan, I know things ended harshly between us, but I was thinking about old times today. Can we grab coffee? I really need to talk to someone I can trust. A bitter laugh escaped my chest. I stared at the message, shaking my head at her sheer audacity. She didn't want to reminisce about our 5 years together. She was drowning and looking for a lifeline. She remembered that I had personally negotiated the original logistics framework with key European investors. Instead of texting back, I hit the call button. She picked up on the very first ring. Ethan? Her voice sounded breathy, desperate, completely lacking the icy edge she had used when firing me in front of 200 people. I'm so glad you called back. You sent a text, Chloe, I said, keeping my tone entirely neutral. What do you want? I wanted to apologize for how public everything was last week. She lied smoothly, trying to slide back into her familiar, manipulative charm. Marcus pushed me to make a quick decision for corporate optics, but I realize now that I hurt you. Can we meet up? Just the two of us. I'm busy, Chloe, I replied coldly. Say what you need to say over the phone. She paused, her breathing heavy over the receiver. When she spoke again, the fake sweetness cracked, revealing her rising panic. Look, our main distribution network just unexpectedly froze, she confessed, her voice tight. The board is losing its mind. You used to handle our primary holding contacts privately, Ethan. Do you still have the direct line to the representative of the parent company? I just need a 5-minute conversation with them to clear up this contract error. There is no error, Chloe, I said, a slow smile forming on my face. What do you mean? She demanded, frustration creeping into her words. Of course it's an error. Rostova Logistics backed out without warning, and the holding firm locked our software authorization keys. Someone is intentionally sabotaging my leadership. Maybe the holding company realized you aren't fit to run Vanguard, I offered quietly. You told the whole company I was dead weight holding you back. Why are you calling dead weight to solve your problems? Ethan, please, she snapped, abandoning all pretense. If this board meeting goes wrong tomorrow, Sterling will strip my CEO title. Everything we worked for, will be gone. Correction, Chloe, I said, standing up and looking out over the city skyline. Everything I worked for. You just took the credit. Are you going to help me or not? She cried out. I'll tell you what, I said, lowering my voice to a sharp whisper. I'll see you at the board meeting tomorrow afternoon. Let's see how well your vision saves you. Wait, what do you mean? I ended the call before she could finish the sentence. I tossed the phone onto the couch, feeling an immense wave of psychological victory. She was running out of moves, completely unaware that the man she had thrown into the gutter held the key to her entire kingdom. My phone screen vibrated on the wooden desk, lighting up the dark study. A high-priority encrypted document notification from Sarah blinked in blue text. I clicked it open immediately. Ethan, they're panicking, Sarah whispered through my headset. Marcus just accessed the board's emergency offshore vault. He's transferring $40 million to mask the quarterly deficits before tomorrow's audit. Did he use Chloe's master signature key? I asked, tracking the digital transaction logs moving across my laptop screen in real time. Yes, Sarah confirmed. Chloe authorized it herself 10 minutes ago. They think they can cover the gap before Arthur Sterling notices. They just committed corporate embezzlement, I said softly, saving the timestamped IP logs directly to my secure server. Keep monitoring the portal, Sarah. Make sure every byte of that transfer is recorded. Understood. Be careful at dinner tonight, Ethan. 2 hours later, I walked into the dimly lit corner of an upscale Italian restaurant. Chloe sat waiting at our old favorite table, wearing a burgundy silk dress and a gentle, practiced smile that used to make my heart skip a beat. Tonight it only made my skin crawl. Thank you for coming, Ethan, she said softly, reaching across the white tablecloth to touch my wrist. I pulled my hand back, sitting down calmly. Let's skip the fake affection, Chloe, I said, staring straight into her eyes. Why am I here? Chloe's smile wavered, but she quickly smoothed her posture, leaning in closer. I wanted to make things right between us. I made a huge mistake letting Marcus influence me. I miss what we had. My eyes flicked down to her lap. Beneath the table edge, her phone screen glowed faintly as she rapidly tapped out a text message. A quiet chime buzzed from her designer purse. Are you texting Marcus right now while telling me you miss me? I asked, keeping my voice entirely devoid of emotion. Chloe froze, her cheeks flushing red before she forced a light laugh. No, of course not. It's just operational stress, Ethan. Look, if you really want to help me save our legacy, I need one small favor from you tonight. A favor? She pulled a folded paper from her purse and slid it across the table alongside an expensive fountain pen. It's just an acknowledgement slip for the original core routing software, Chloe explained, her voice dripping with fake tenderness. Since you left, the legal department needs your secondary signature to verify the patent ownership. Sign it and I'll make sure you get a massive severance payout. I picked up the document. It wasn't a simple verification. It was a full transfer of patent ownership designed to retroactively cover Marcus's illegal offshore transfer. She was trying to frame me as the authority behind their missing millions. You really think I'm that stupid, don't you? I asked quietly, looking up at her. Ethan, please, she pleaded, tears welling up in her eyes, tears I now knew were completely manufactured. If you don't sign this, Vanguard collapses tomorrow. Do you really want to destroy everything we built together over 5 years? We didn't build it together, Chloe, I replied, grabbing the pen. You just enjoyed the fruits of my labor. I leaned over and scribbled a swift signature at the bottom line. But I didn't sign my real legal name. I signed the specific authorization alias linked directly to my grandfather's primary holding firm's fraud tracking system. Chloe snatched the paper back, her eyes shining with relief. Thank you, Ethan. I knew you still cared about me. Don't thank me yet, Chloe, I said, sliding out of the booth and looking down at her with cold pity. That document doesn't save your company. It officially logs your direct consent to corporate embezzlement. Her face went completely pale. What are you talking about? Marcus transferred $40 million out of the offshore reserve an hour ago, I said, leaning in close so only she could hear. And with that signed document in your hands, you just proved you co-signed the fraud. See you in the boardroom tomorrow morning. I turned on my heel and walked out into the cool night air, leaving her sitting alone in horror. The trap was officially sprung. The morning air was crisp as I stood across the street, watching flashing blue lights reflect off the glass facade of Vanguard Enterprises. Federal auditors and police officers streamed through the grand entrance, carrying sealed evidence boxes out of the lobby. My phone vibrated violently in my coat pocket. Chloe's name flashed on the screen for the 12th time in 30 minutes. I pressed the phone to my ear, listening to the chaos in the background, shouting heavy footsteps and crying. Ethan. Oh God, Ethan, please answer. Chloe shrieked into the receiver, her voice trembling uncontrollably. Where are you? I'm nearby, Chloe, I answered, keeping my voice steady and measured. Why are there police cars outside your office? It's a nightmare, she sobbed, abandoning every trace of her usual composure. The authorities just raided the executive suite. They claim $40 million vanished from the offshore reserve last night. They're freezing all company accounts right now. That sounds serious, I replied coldly. Where is Marcus? That coward locked himself in his office, she spat out through heavy breaths. He's trying to scrub his hard drive, but the federal agents are breaking his door down right now. Ethan, you have to help me. The emergency board meeting starts in 20 minutes. Arthur Sterling called federal prosecutors, and they're planning to remove me and hand me over to law enforcement. And why are you calling me? I asked, stepping off the curb and crossing the street toward the entrance. You signed that paper last night, she pleaded, her tone rising in desperate panic. You know how our financial routing works. You can tell them that the offshore transfer was just an authorized patent purchase. You can testify that I didn't steal anything. Chloe, that document you made me sign didn't clear your name, I said, walking right past the police tape at the front doors. It confirmed that you personally authorized Marcus's illegal transaction. Silence hung on the line for 3 terrifying seconds, broken only by her ragged breathing. What did you say? She whispered, her voice dropping into pure terror. You wanted to frame me for your operational failures, I said smoothly, stepping into the glass elevator and pressing the button for the top floor. Instead, you handed federal agents a signed confession. You set me up, she screamed, her voice cracking over the line. After everything I did for you, you ruined my life? You ruined your own life the moment you chose greed over loyalty, I countered sharply. You threw me out into the rain like garbage to steal my company. Did you really think I wouldn't fight back? Ethan, please, she begged, weeping openly now. I was confused. Marcus manipulated me. He told me we could take the company public and make hundreds of millions. I still love you, Ethan. Please don't do this to me. Come up here and tell the board it was all a misunderstanding. I'm already in the elevator, Chloe, I said, watching the floor numbers light up as I ascended to the boardroom floor. I'll be there in 10 seconds. Thank God, she gasped, mistakenly taking my words as a sign of mercy. Please just tell Sterling that you authorized the transfer. Save me, Ethan, and I'll give you back your executive office. We can start over. I don't need you to give me anything, Chloe, I replied as the elevator chimed gently, announcing my arrival on the executive floor. The heavy doors slid open, revealing a hallway filled with frantic employees, uniformed federal agents and corporate lawyers shouting at one another. At the end of the hall stood Chloe, holding her phone to her ear, looking completely pale and disheveled in her ruined suit. She locked eyes with me, a desperate glint of hope surfacing on her face. She took a step toward me, reaching out her hand. Ethan. She breathed out. I disconnected the call without saying another word. I slipped my phone into my jacket pocket and adjusted my tie, looking past her toward the heavy double doors of the boardroom where the final vote was about to take place. It's time to end this, I whispered to myself, walking straight past her without looking back. The boardroom was complete chaos. Shouting investors waved financial sheets, reporters flashed cameras through the glass walls, and armed federal officers lined the back perimeter. Chloe and Marcus sat in the hot seats at the far end of the mahogany table, glaring at each other with pure hatred. It was his idea. Chloe yelled, pointing a trembling finger at Marcus. He engineered the offshore transfer. He forced me to sign those authorization keys. Don't lie to save your own skin. Marcus shouted back, slamming his fist on the table. You begged me to hide that $40 million gap so Sterling wouldn't fire you. You knew every single detail. Silence. Arthur Sterling roared, slamming his wooden gavel down. Both of you are facing total ruin. The parent company revoked our operating licenses an hour ago. The stock is dead. Who is going to answer for this catastrophic failure? I will, a deep, commanding voice echoed from the doorway. The heavy double doors swung wide open. The entire room went dead silent as I stepped inside, flanked by my grandfather Julian Vance, Elena Rostova, and 6 senior federal prosecutors in sharp navy suits. Chloe gasped, her eyes wide as she stared at my grandfather. Julian Vance? The founding titan? What is this washed-up analyst doing here? Marcus sneered, glaring at me with sweat pouring down his forehead. Security? Throw Ethan Vance out of this building immediately. Sit down, Marcus, Sterling commanded, his hand trembling as he read a heavy leather folder handed to him by one of my attorneys. Sterling looked up at me, his eyes wide with absolute shock. Is this document verified? It is, Mr. Sterling, my grandfather said, stepping forward with his silver cane. 5 years ago, my grandson Ethan built the core architecture of Vance-Vanguard Group. To protect his privacy and test his personal relationships, he placed 72% of voting shares into an anonymous master trust under my supervision. Ethan is the sole beneficiary, the true founder, and the absolute owner of this entire enterprise. Gasps exploded across the boardroom. Cameras flashed incessantly through the glass walls. Chloe's face drained of all color, her jaw dropping as she stared at me in sheer horror. Ethan, no. That's impossible. You were just a minor manager. I owned everything, Chloe, I said, my voice cutting through the room with absolute authority. Every room you walked in, every salary check you signed, every patent you bragged about, it was all mine. I stayed behind the scenes because I loved you. Because I thought we were building a future together. You own the holding firm? Marcus choked out, sinking back into his chair as his face turned ghost white. The entity that just revoked our licenses? I revoked your access, Marcus, I replied, stepping right up to the head of the table. I authorized Elena Rostova to freeze your international routes. And I personally passed the digital logs of your $40 million offshore fraud to the federal prosecutors standing right behind me. 2 federal agents immediately stepped forward, pulling pair of steel handcuffs from their belts. Marcus Reed, you are under arrest for corporate embezzlement and grand fraud, an agent announced, forcing Marcus's arms behind his back. Chloe made me do it. Ethan, please? Marcus screamed as he was dragged toward the door, kicking and begging. I was just following her orders. Chloe stood frozen on trembling legs, tears streaming down her pale cheeks as she looked at me. Ethan, my love, please listen to me. Do not call me that, I said, my voice turning to ice. I was blind, she sobbed, throwing herself across the table toward me, reaching out her hands. Marcus manipulated me. He tricked me into firing you. I never stopped loving you, Ethan. You built this kingdom for us, didn't you? We can still be together. I'll be your wife. I'll do whatever you want. I looked down at her with complete, unshakable indifference, feeling zero emotion left in my chest. I built this kingdom, Chloe, I said, looking her dead in the eye as Sterling handed me the master corporate seal. And today I am stripping you of everything. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed down the marble hallway as federal officers dragged Marcus toward the elevators. His frantic screams for mercy faded into the background, leaving the executive lobby in dead silence. I turned away from the boardroom table, stepping past Arthur Sterling and the awestruck board members. My grandfather touched my shoulder gently, giving me a silent nod of pride, while Elena stood near the glass doors with a triumphant smirk. Ethan, wait. Please just look at me. Chloe ran into the hallway, collapsing onto her knees right in front of me. She grabbed the hem of my suit jacket, her eyes red, swollen, and spilling tears over her ruined makeup. Get up, Chloe, I said, my voice completely devoid of anger or warmth. I can't. Not until you forgive me, she sobbed, clutching my jacket tighter. Marcus fed me lies every single day, Ethan. He told me you were trying to push me out of the CEO chair. He convinced me that firing you was the only way to protect my position. I was scared. I was weak. You weren't scared, Chloe, I replied, looking down at her with cold clarity. You were greedy. You saw an opportunity to take full credit for my years of sacrifice, and you took it without hesitating. I made a terrible mistake, she wailed, shaking her head frantically. I don't care about the CEO title anymore. I don't care about the money. I just want you back. We spent 5 years planning our life together, Ethan. You can't just throw all of that away. You threw it away the moment you handed me a termination letter in front of 200 people, I said softly, unclenching her trembling fingers from my jacket. You told me I held you back. You said I lacked vision. I didn't mean it. I swear I didn't mean it, she pleaded, reaching up to try and grab my hands. Please give me one more chance. I'll work for you. I'll start at the bottom. Just don't destroy us. I took a step back, creating distance between us. As I looked at her weeping on the floor, I searched inside my heart for the burning hatred that had consumed me a week ago. But there was nothing left. No rage, no resentment, no desire to hurt her further. I felt only pity, and an incredible, weightless sense of freedom. Your contract with Vance-Vanguard Group is officially revoked, I stated, my voice echoing clearly down the grand corridor. You are stripped of all severance packages, stock options, and executive privileges. You have 10 minutes to clear your desk under security supervision. Ethan, please, she cried, burying her face in her hands as her shoulders shook uncontrollably. I turned my back on her and walked toward Sarah, who was standing near the assistant station holding a tablet, her eyes wide with shock and relief. Sarah, I said, stepping up to her desk. Yes, Mr. Vance, she stammered, adjusting her glasses. Effective immediately, you are the new Vice President of Internal Operations, I announced with a warm smile. You showed loyalty, courage, and true integrity when everything fell apart. You deserve this office far more than anyone else. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth, tears of joy filling her eyes. Ethan. I don't know what to say. Thank you. You earned it, Sarah. Get ready, we have a global restructuring to manage. I walked over to Elena Rostova, who extended her hand with a sharp, respectful grin. So, partner, Elena said, her ice blue eyes sparkling. Are we ready to sign those European distribution contracts? The ink is already dry in my mind, Elena, I replied, shaking her hand firmly. Let's take this company global. A pleasure doing business with the real owner, she chuckled smoothly. I stepped into the private express elevator alongside my grandfather. The glass doors slid shut, sealing away the sound of Chloe's distant weeping and the frantic murmurs of the corporate world. When the ground floor doors opened, I pushed through the heavy glass entrance of Vanguard headquarters and walked out into the bright, warm morning sunlight. The crisp morning air filled my lungs, clearing away the last lingering remnants of betrayal and heartbreak. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the platinum engagement ring Chloe had dropped into my hand the day she fired me. I held it up to the light for a split second, looking at the bright reflection of the sun. Without a moment of hesitation, I dropped the ring straight into a storm drain beneath the curb. It clinked against the iron grate once before falling into the dark water below, gone forever. I smiled, straightened my tie, and stepped out onto the city street, ready for my new dawn.